I'm not speaking.
Hmm.
Hi, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us to this discussion with the progressive grassroots movement in Israel. I'm going to immediately turn this over to Libby Linkensky, New Israel Fund's Vice President for Public Development, so she can introduce our speakers today. Libby.
Thank you so much, Diana. And a big thank you to J Street for organizing this. I'm always so honored and proud to partner with J Street, who really is, J Street is NIF's closest partner, basically anywhere, one of our closest organizations, probably in the world. And we often think of ourselves as two sides of a coin. And so in these moments, it's so important to have spaces to come together and understand what everyone is doing. And so I'm really honored to be here. And in fact, I think the first time that I approached Alon-Lee Green and Maisam Jaljuli from Omdim Beyachad standing together to come to the US was actually for a J Street conference. And so this kind of three-way partnership is a long-standing one. And the folks at J Street asked me to open with just a few words of context. And so, I think it goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway, that the coronavirus pandemic has already affected our lives in so many profound ways, no matter who we are or where we live. Just before we went live, we were talking already about just the differences between various towns and cities and countries around the world, and it really is hitting so many of us differently. And people have always come to NIF as a place where they can support people in Israel who are standing up for what's right, building a thriving shared democracy that ensures a place for everyone. And that can seem a little bit difficult right now as some of our elected leaders are acting irresponsibly or even immorally. In Israel, Netanyahu is busy using the pandemic as a cover to grab power and to even dismantle some of the foundations of Israeli democracy. And it's been a year without a functioning government, and people in Israel have had great medical care, of course, unlike many of us here in the US, but many Israelis are worried about making rent, making ends meet, putting food on the table, and the new Netanyahu government can't really be trusted to truly help all families. And that's particularly true as we think about the actions towards Palestinian people in the West Bank and Gaza, as the virus could potentially spread, which would be catastrophic. So we, over the last weeks and months, have done what NIF normally does, which is that we've brought together our supporters from around the world with a shared mission. And Omdim Beyachad, standing together, is really a huge and important partner in all of this. So our idea has been to use in this moment of crisis, use our collective resources, expertise, relationships, financial resources to make things better. And we've been thinking about this in three big ways. And as many of you know, NIF has been supporting civil society for 40 years, and it's a very robust picture of many, many organizations. And for many years, the civil society sector, the NGO sector, was kind of organized around issues. And it's only in the last couple of years that we really are seeing a broad-based progressive movement orientation that isn't just about one issue. Our joke at NIF is that if you look at photos from demonstrations in the last few years, they're flooded with purple because Omdim Beyachad standing together is there, whether it's about women's issues, stopping annexation, disability rights, Arab-Jewish equality, they're there, they're on the ground organizing demonstrations. And in this moment of COVID, I would say the three big ways that we've been thinking about how to make things better, and this is shared with standing together, is first and foremost, we're protecting the people struggling the most by making sure that everyone in Israel of any background can access government information and services to get well, stay healthy, and to provide for themselves and their families. And I'm sure Maisam and Alon-Lee will have more to say about that. We're supporting the lawyers and civil servants and activists who are defending the democratic institutions and civil liberties that we all need every day, but during a crisis especially. There are a lot of ways that governments around the world, and including in Israel, are rolling back civil liberties for the sake of the virus, and identifying exactly where that line is a very important part of the work. And then finally, recognizing that even the best governments can't do everything that a society needs alone. And so we are doing everything that we can to make sure that civil society and NGOs and watchdog organizations have the resources that they need to maintain their activity during this time, grow their activity, and thrive on the other side of it. So with that, I'm really excited to introduce Alon-Lee Green and Maisam Jaljuli from Standing Together. I'm not going to do the bios because I think it's more interesting for you to talk about yourself, and perhaps Diana would like to. But it's really an honor to introduce you. It's an honor to support you, and to channel financial resources and other resources from Americans and people around the world to support your very, very important work. So I'm not doing a fundraising pitch because this is not a New Israel Fund call, it's a J Street call. But you know, that is what we are out here doing in general.
But thank you so much.
Thank you, Libby. And let's just move right ahead to describing what you are. I know Alon-Lee and Maisam both come to this with a strong union organizing background. And they each came to realize that they couldn't achieve the objectives that they had on behalf of people who were marginalized in their respective societies without working together to achieve equitable conditions for all. And that was the origins. But I'd really like for you to explain to everyone, it's not a political party, it's not an NGO, it's a movement. And how do you define this?
I will try and go first. So what we basically do is organize people. We try to ask the very simple question of how can we move something in reality to progress it and to make reality better after the action, the collective action that we're doing. So we try to locate struggles and to ask ourselves what are the things in reality that should be changed, that can be changed. And then we organize people from different communities and different backgrounds to create this change. We believe that there are two perceptions of how change or power, or where power lies. One is the kind of perception the establishment and the media tells us about, that there's this man on top that decides everything, whether it's a government, a minister, the prime minister. And we need to beg really nicely and to ask for change to happen. But the other perception, the one we believe it, is that the people hold a power to change their lives. And if the people will not organize, if we will not organize to change our lives, change will not just happen because someone will wake up some morning and decide to give us something better today. A nice example of it right now is that as any other country in the world, Israel is suffering from the coronavirus, from COVID. And it's also a huge health crisis, but it's also an economical crisis, an economical and social crisis as it is in other places. And not like other governments in the world, a lot of governments in the world, in Europe, in the US, and in far East Asia, governments are taking measurements. They are actually providing a lot of social solutions and economical solutions for people in need that lost their jobs, lost their incomes, closed their businesses. But in Israel, the initial amount of support by the Israeli government was so ridiculously low. People got 10, 20, 30% of their income, and they told, you know, you should get by only by that. And we organized people. We started going into digital organizing in the time we couldn't leave their house, and then protests and struggles. And now it's just raised and raised and raised because we kept pressing the government. It's not enough yet, but it changed. People are getting more than they got in the beginning. So just in a nutshell, that's what we're doing. We organize people on the base of our beliefs that we can live in a society with equality, with social justice, and with peace.
Thank you. And I just want to remind everyone who's on Zoom that if you have questions, please go to the Q&A at the bottom of your screen and send them in. Maisam, I know that you worked hard to get out the Arab vote in the last election. Can you tell us something about that effort?
Yeah, I think that, if we're talking about the last election and, before nobody watched that 2 days after the election, we will be in such a situation that we will be all locked at homes and not able to be in the streets. But I think that the change that happened in the last election was a very significant change in regardless of the Arab vote. We saw that about 65% of Arab voters really got the vote out and they went to vote. And this is what a huge increase in voting. And that the joint list reached to 15 MKs, this is the first time that we are having these huge numbers. But unfortunately, sometimes it seems to be that, and I wrote it after, all the negotiations between the Blue and White and the Likud. I wrote it that it seems to be that, hating the Arabs and not willing to be in cooperation with the Arabs at all in Israel, the Arab citizens, and the joint list was bigger than the democracy and the sharing policies. So we were very disappointed after, the negotiations between Gantz and Netanyahu, and we saw that there was a chance, to form a government with the joint list. There was a big chance, and we really thought that this time it will happen, and Gantz had a lot of negotiations with the joint list leaders, and suddenly he switched off and he went to Netanyahu and is formed actually on Thursday. There will be a new government. I think that was a huge disappointment in the Arab society, but I think, it doesn't mean that people lost hope. I don't think that Arab citizens lost hope. I think that they really understood this time that the power was worth it, because the power they got actually changed the discourse in the Israeli politics. Yes, for a few months, but it's really changed it. And this is I think that is the first step. This is the first step, and we are having more and more steps to do. And actually, I'm really optimistic that also if it will be another election, also the numbers of Arab voters will or increase or be the same like this election. So, and I think that nowadays, especially Ayman Audi in the joint list, he is really talking a lot about, having this large umbrella of progressives in Israel, Arab progressives and Jewish progressives. And this initiative that Ayman is really holding is so much, I think, we are in Omdim Biyachad, we are very much, think it's the really, the thing that should happen right now in Israel, and we are, who began that in when we established Standing Together 5 years ago. And it's very important to see that our discourse, that our vision is really, taking more and more, being more and more mainstream in the progressive Jewish and Arabs in Israel. And we are very proud of that, because I think we began to do so, and politicians and others saw the success of Standing Together. So they are really, thinking that it's gonna happen and it's gonna work.
That's great. Congratulations. That's a lot to be proud of. And I'm glad that you're so optimistic about what's to come. So what are your priority issues right now, and how are you able to organize around them, given that there's still going to be distancing, so you can't necessarily get the volume? I mean, you're called standing together, and that's
Standing together 2 meters apart.
yes.
Yeah.
So I'd love to know what your priority issues are and how you're drawing people to your movement, despite the fact that you can't have that great swath of purple everywhere.
So first of all, somehow a bit more than 100 people joined the movement just in the last month during the lockdown, because we are able also to digitally organize. So we have trainings twice a week. Now they're not local, but they're national in Zoom. We try to draw people by saying that even if we sit at home, we can be together. So we have a few projects and focus areas. The first one is just an interesting, very cool project, which is the broadcast of hope, the Hope broadcast, where we have between 4 and 6 broadcast events a week on practically everything. So it can be story time, story hour for children in Arabic and in Hebrew for parents that wants to have some occupation for their children. And it's now in the Ramadan, we have a series of events on nutrition during the Ramadan and on how to pass the time healthily when you have to sit at the home and be safe. It's about the annexation, about the social and economical situation. It's about the democratic measurements of, or the anti-democratic measurements of the government during the coronavirus lockdown and the way they took advantage of it. We just broadcast with hundreds or even less if that's what's interesting, but we encourage the people in the movement and our the public that's around us to just bring topics and to create a lot of meetings and broadcast together. So that's one thing. But apart from that, we have 2 main political struggles that we are involved in leading right now. The one is the struggle that we call it the people against the
disconnected.
The people against the disconnected government, where we practically say that there is the people of Israel, the 9 million citizens, not all of them, but most of them, that they have needs. They need a government that will ensure them that their economical well-being will be okay during this time, that they will have a roof above their heads, that they will have an ability to keep their jobs after the crisis, that they will be able to provide for their families, and so on and so on. But then there's the government and the people the government serves, that they talk with us about damaging the parliament and restricting the parliament. And they talk with us about annexation, and they talk with us about solutions that are solutions for not real problems of us. Who will benefit from damaging the Knesset in Israel, or from restricting the power of the Knesset? Give me one Israeli that lives, just a normal life in Israel that will benefit from annexation. So what we try to say is that there's a fight over the agenda, whether you are for the people and then you should solve the problems of the people, or you're one of the disconnected people in government that actually care about not solving our problems and inventing problems no one cares about, and solutions that will be solutions for nothing. So we demand that the government will provide 100% security for the people during economical security and social security during the time of the crisis. We demand that the government will provide guarantees for our income, and that will not be, needing to be satisfied with 30% of our previous income. And the other project that we're starting or struggle that we started to organize around is the struggle against the unfortunately quickly upcoming annexation. So we understand that the government has, decided that it's a final decision to go for annexation within a few weeks. We assume that up until July, it will already be in process in Parliament and will come into votes. And we understand how dangerous and how terrible it is for the Palestinian people that is living under a military occupation for more than 52 years. But we also understand that it is dangerous for the Israelis, Arabs and Jews. It is dangerous for us because we don't want to have the violence that will erupt probably because of this unresponsible step. We understand that it's bad for us because the budgets and funds will be allocated for more war and more occupation and more warfare instead of going to our welfare and our social and economical security. So we are starting to organize around that issue. And just a week and a half ago, in both struggles, we started also mobilizing people to the streets. We had a series of demonstrations with thousands of people. Still, we try to keep the health measurements, to keep people in 2 meters apart from each other, wearing a mask. We have dozens of activists in every demonstration that are with a yellow vest, and they go person by person and they tell them, keep distance of 2 meters, wear your mask on, keep the health measurements because it's very important. Maisam, do you want to add some?
I just want to add that I think that this mobilizing that we are doing and organizing people throughout the coronavirus, I think that it's very important because now most of the people are dealing with daily life problems. A lot of people lost their work. A lot of people have no their let's say basic needs are not being given by the government, and you know, a week by a week we see the dangers of this situation, and a lot of people, and we think that, you know, after the coronavirus will be, you know, we will finish all the issues of the health issues of the coronavirus. We will face a major economic and social economic crisis in Israel. And as a movement, as standing together, we need to be ready also to help people demanding the government, this disconnected government, demanding them to ensure that we will live in a decent life, actually. And we saw, I think that only today we saw that 30% of the people who were, you know, unemployed throughout the crisis will not get to their work, and a lot of people who have small businesses are going to close their own businesses because the government is not giving them enough you know, are not giving them the oxygen to breathe and to continue opening their own businesses. And this is very dangerous for us. And you know what? The government is only talking right now about annexation and how they will do this annexation and how important is the annexation is for Israel. I think we need to, this is a huge challenge for us, you know, to convince people that these issues are really connected to each other, because right now in the Israeli, I think, you know, mainstream Israelis, they are not connecting between, you know, the economic situation and the annexation. A lot of people seems to, and we need to know also that this economic situation is not only because of the coronavirus. We had, you know, for a decade, we had a government, and a very, very new liberal government that really didn't work for the public sector, and had privatized many ministers and, you know, שירותים, איך נגיד זה?
Public services.
Public services. And, you know, we are now, throughout this coronavirus, we are seeing the implication of these plans, economic plans, the neoliberal plans. And nowadays, people are more convinced, yes, really, they are more convinced that the public services are very important, and the government need to invest in the public services, but they are not seeing the implication of the occupation and the implication of the annexation. And this is, I think that this is our challenge, to really show that these things are connected. And this will be the challenge in the next few weeks.
Thank you, because as you know, J Street is focused almost exclusively right now on annexation. So it's really that you are working at making the case to the public that so many of their the problems that seem fundamental right now are related to the occupation and the potential for, and that annexation would only make them worse and compound those problems. Maisam, I know there's also within the Trump peace plan a unique threat to your city and the adjacent towns and cities in the Northern Triangle. Can you tell us something about that?
Yeah, when the Trump plan were published, we actually were surprised that territories from Israel, which is the triangle, is part of the Trump plan. They actually plan to move us to the other side, which is it's not really a Palestinian state, but they are having plans to move us. They are having plans to really I don't know how to say it, to took from us the citizenship of Israel. It was really weird for us, and I think that because it's Trump and Netanyahu, things were very dangerous. And when we see that when they are planning things, they are really working hard to have it done. When we see what happens right now in the annexation, so we are standing together. I think we are the only ones that really mobilized people through having objection of the what's so-called, giving up the triangle area and move it to the Palestinian territories. And I think people really appreciated, people from the triangle really appreciated our work as standing together, and they cooperated a lot with us. And, we showed them that they are not alone. And there are a lot also of Jewish people who are supporting their struggle, and they are really willing to be with them in the struggle. So it was very important. I think that the danger is still, we are still in danger. And it's something that we should all the time emphasize, and all the time show people that this danger is going to be real when Netanyahu is the Prime Minister of Israel. But unfortunately, we got Netanyahu again after the election. So,
well, there's going to be a next time. You know that. I'd like to remind everybody that if you have a question, please go to the Q&A at the bottom right of your Zoom bar and type it in. I'm actually ready to go to some of our questions right now. And I have a question about your to Israelis with regard to annexation. Is there any concern at all about the implications of annexation for Israel's future as a real democracy?
Unfortunately, that's the sad reality. The media, following the government, of course, are only talking about the implications of what will the Europeans say, how exactly will be the mechanism of the US administration approving Israel annexation of the West Bank or parts of the West Bank. But it is just amazing how the Israeli media and in the public general mainstream discourse, no one talks or asks the questions of what will happen after we annex parts of the West Bank? What will happen after we annex the Jordan Valley? What will happen after we annex settlements and make them part of the official Israeli state inside our borders? No one asks the question of why should we benefit with the fact that Jordan, the official state of Jordan, will disconnect any connections with Israel and cancel the peace agreement, because they actually they are saying they will do so if Israel will annex parts of the West Bank. No one asks the question of what will be the economical damage of countries in the world or states deciding that they are not going with this annexation, so they're canceling agreements with the Israeli state. And it's amazing how also no one asks the questions of what exists in this territory that is going to be annexed. For people, when they hear the Jordan Valley, they haven't been there. They don't know where it is. Probably they maybe know where is this line on the map, but they don't really know how many Palestinians live in the Jordan Valley, how many settlements are about to be annexed into the Israeli state and to become official part of the. Is there a direct line between Israel, the official Israel in the 67 borders, to the settlements in the Jordan Valley? All those questions are absent from the public discourse, and we feel that it is our duty, us and other amazing and important organizations, this is our duty to create this public discourse around the annexation, not only by asking what damage it will create to Palestinians that are living under occupation, but also what is the Israeli interest or the lack of interest of us to annex the West Bank. We believe it is against our interest to annex parts of the West Bank or settlements at all. We believe that it will be an obstacle in the way for peace. Trump called his ridiculous plan, the deal of the century, a peace plan. It's all about everything but actually achieving peace, because everyone that has some sense in him or her, they know that there will be no peace with this plan. It's just pushing away the chance for peace. So it is amazing, and we are proud to say also that when we started the wave of social protests right now, many demonstrations every day, we managed to collect a lot of sectors and communities into one big waves of demonstrations. The speeches that members from our movement give on stages are speeches that are connecting the social and economical questions with the questions of annexation. We try to say that it is all connected. You can't have social justice, you can't have social solutions if all the government is doing is pushing for annexation. You can't have peace and security and funds for public health and education when they put all their funds in planning plans of having a big war with Palestinians and neighboring countries, because that will what happen if there will be annexation. So I will stop here and say it's a ridiculous, absurd idea to have the annexation, and we are doing everything that we can to create a public discourse against it.
I just want to add to Alon-Lee that the importance of getting together all the struggles. I want to talk a lot about another struggle that happens right now in Israel, which is what is called the Black Flag struggle, which is the struggle against the corruption and a struggle for the democracy of Israel, and so. And I think that I don't feel that I'm connecting to this struggle because it doesn't really talk about the other issues. They are talking about the corruption of Netanyahu and his government, and they are not talking about annexation. They are not talking about the occupation. They are not talking even about, the shared society. They are not thinking that the democracy in Israel is built by, having the whole people in Israel inside this democracy. It seems to be that this is the fault that the center left traditional center-left in Israel is doing right now. The traditional center-left is dividing between the struggles. They think that they should only talk about corruption, about defending the democracy and maybe saving the Israeli democracy. But meanwhile, another things are happening, and they are very, very dangerous things that are happening, and they are not having no answer for these things. I want to say that in what makes it, the struggle against annexation will be very hard is that a large parts of the center and unfortunately the left, Zionist left in Israel are not having any action against annexation, but somehow they are accepting the annexation. Yes, they are having, these talks about it should be accepted by the Palestinians. We shouldn't do it in one side, but they are not opposing the annexation. It's, ideologically, they are not opposing the annexation. And this really makes the struggle more hard for us.
That's very clear. Thank you so much. I have a question from one of our members about the economic protests from several years ago, which I know you participated in as individuals. This is before Amdim B'Yachad. Why was that so short-lived? Why is that no longer a driving agenda as the people who kicked that off had hoped it would be? And it really seemed that this was going to be a time of progressive surge and real attention to the issues that you have since taken on. And why do you feel that your movement has a chance now of really getting the momentum that movement lacked?
It's a very good question. Just for people that maybe don't know the background, Israel had an equivalent social protest to many protests in that era of 2011, the summer of 2011, Occupy Wall Street in the US, the Indignados in Spain, the Greek very angry protest, many, and the Arab Spring, of course, in the Arab world, Egypt, Tunisia, and so on. And our social protest was the biggest in the extent of how many citizens participated in this in the term of how big is our population. At one night, half a million people went out to the street out of 8 million people in Israel. That's a huge protest. It would be like 20-something million Americans at demonstrations all around the country at one night. It's huge. And it was very successful in terms of mobilizing people out to the streets. Our slogan was "The people demand social justice." When we said the people, it was the first time we used the Jewish and Arab together. The people of Israel demand social justice, a revolutionary way to use the word the people, Ha'am, in Israel. But then it ended not only with us. I was part of the leadership of this struggle in 2011. And it ended not with us winning and achieving a deep social change in Israel, but with us not achieving a lot of practical achievements, like, I don't know, new social laws, raising the minimum wage and so on. But it also ended with Netanyahu elected as prime minister again, and the agenda of the social protest hijacked by Yair Lapid, who is a neoliberal practically, and he spoke in behalf of the protest. Two main conclusions of us were drawn from that. First is that we lacked movement. Actually, the days of the social protest and the conclusions we could draw from it is part of the beginning of standing together. We understood that we lacked a vessel to pile up energy and to translate mobilizations and public energy into social mobilization and actually political change, building power. And we started building a movement afterwards. The second conclusion is that you cannot disconnect the very interconnections between social justice and peace. We did everything we could those days in 2011 not to talk about the occupation, not to mention the fact that maybe when we ask where's the money goes to the occupation, the money goes to the settlements, the money goes to the army, the money goes to security, or how they always talk about it. And we did everything we could to say it's right and left together. We should create a very wide public and hug each other while we're doing this protest and not create conflicts. While the second Netanyahu could, he started a new violent eruption with Gaza. He brought back Gilad Shalit, and all of a sudden everyone talked about the fact that they need security, that they are hating Palestinians. I don't know, many different agendas around the security axis, and no one talked about social justice anymore. So another conclusion of standing together is that we need to connect the struggle. We need to say that if you want to be relevant to the lives of people, you need to understand that they need a job, they need an income, but they also need security. They also need peace. They also need to know that they live in the south and they have no missiles shot above their heads, or they don't send their children to drop bombs on Gaza or Palestinians. So we try to answer the things that we did wrong on 2011 and to draw conclusions. And yes, we are trying to create first of all, not create. We understand that there is a social unrest, unease in the Israeli public. People are angry. People know that they can get more than they get right now. The government can do more than it's doing right now. And we try to diverge it into a protest that we say it's not against each other. It's not Jews against Arabs. It's not Haredim and ultra-Orthodox against secular. It's not independent contractors against employees. It's all of us, the 90%, all of us together against the ones that are benefiting from the current reality.
Thank you so much. And I'd like to go back to you, Maisam, about to elaborate a bit more about the implications of the peace plan for Tyra and for you. For example, what happens to citizenship rights of the Arab citizens of Israel who are in that area that is subject to relocation, and also which geographic area, how many people in what area are going to be affected by this?
Meanwhile, they are talking about only annexate the Jordan Valley. They are not talking about the triangle. And Netanyahu, during the elections, tried to say, no, I didn't mean there will be nothing to, you will still Israeli citizens, and this part of the plan will not happen. And he tried, to calm up people and to tell them that it's not going to happen. But we don't believe Netanyahu. I think nobody, not only in the Arabs, the Palestinian citizens of Israel, but only a lot of Jews people in Israel are not believing Netanyahu, because Netanyahu is well known as people who, as a man who always lies. So we need to be cautious. We need to be, to really, listen to every word and they try to prevent any kind of getting the triangle out from Israel. We are talking about 3,100 people, so it's huge numbers. We are talking, about also the areas of what's called the big triangle. That means the south and the north triangle, which includes what we call Wadi Ara, or the Arab Valley. And the biggest, it's in the Arab Valley, we have the second biggest city in Arab city in Israel, which is Al-Fahim. And I think that right now, because of the whole issue of the coronavirus and, the Arab, the Palestinian citizens are really facing a very hard time dealing with the implication of the coronavirus. People are not talking about, the political issue in a way of, of what's going to happen to us. And I think that we need to get it again into the discourse. We need to raise this discourse again and, be cautious about the implications of the annexation, and that this will affect us also, because if they annex the Jordan Valley and it will be successful annexation, and if, the international community will not prevent it or will not, do a real action against the annexation, so nobody will prevent Netanyahu to get rid of the triangle area. So we really need to reach more people to help us in this issue. We need to reach the Israeli society, the Jewish people, because most of them, they don't understand what is this plan is about. So we need to reach more and more communities and people to get their support in our struggle.
Thank you. And we have another question, which is, are there other organizations that you've been working with within Israel, other social change, other organizations devoted to the kind of social change and economic equity that you're addressing?
Definitely, yes. It's a big yes. We are very keen on cooperating and creating alliances and building partnerships with as many as possible partners and organizations and movements and different forces and players on the field. We understand that if you want to move something in reality, if you want to create change, you need to cooperate and you need to create practical goals. It's not that you need to say, only if you believe in 100% democracy and 100% social justice and 100% peace and stuff, we will cooperate with you. No, right now, just the last weekend, we had 12 rallies across Israel within Friday and Saturday that we were part of organizing. Arab towns, Jewish towns, periphery, center, all across the country. In Kiryat Shmona in the north, and actually the first time Standing Together had a rally in Eilat, the most southern city in Israel. And we cooperated with organizations that are voting for Netanyahu. People came to our demonstrations that are Netanyahu voters, and we truly believe that unless we fight with people that are not like us, that are not from the sociology of us, that are not from the places we are coming from, that are not from the organizations we are from, unless we will create those kind of shared struggles and shared interest struggle, we will just be demonstrating with ourselves and create no change. So in the social and economical protest right now, we are talking about having an agenda of taking care of our real problems instead of inventing those imaginary problems of annexation and stuff. And the voters and the people are coming with us. The independent contractors that are getting nothing during the crisis from the government, we have a strong alliance with them, and we are demonstrating. I don't know, I didn't check who's voting for who, but I know they're not voters of Meretz or the Joint List, the far left in Israel. And in the fight for solutions for women during the crisis, Maisam can really talk about what's going on, but there's a real crisis right now, real crisis in houses of women suffering from violence, and the government is giving no budgets, doing nothing. So we cooperate with a lot of organizations, some of them in other issues, will not be with us. Some of them will say you believe in too much equality or radical economics. Some will say, I'm not with you in the annexation fight. But we are creating the alliances that will allow us to move things forward and solve problems in the Israeli reality. And that's the way you can be relevant to the lives of people.
And I think that the government is afraid of that. The government as well, and the right wing, I think, which is involved in the government, are aware that we are having now cooperation with, organization or people who are not so-called leftists, and they are trying, in their media and in their to tell their people, hey, take care. These standing together are two leftists, and you are cooperating with leftists, and they are, they are the hatreds of Israel, and so on and so on. I think that it's not working for them. And we saw that a lot of people who start cooperating with us on these socio-economical issues are still cooperating with us. Also after, that the media said that you are cooperating with the far left. And this is a success. This is a success because people are really, these people and this organization knows that standing together can really mobilize and organize people through action and can really hold a big demonstration and a big struggle.
Thank you.
And just by the way, on this issue and another issue is that yes, the newspaper of Netanyahu issued a title like "Standing Together is involved in economical social protests," and they tried to say like it's something bad. We told them that they're really that we are really proud, and that's it's a divide and conquer. It's a very known tactics. It doesn't work. People know their interests. People don't need the government to tell them that they have an interest to fight to get more benefits from the government during the corona crisis. And another thing, I want to add that Maisam, on this topic of women, is going to speak on the 18th of May on a panel of the New Israel Fund about the issues of women and how different organizations are organizing around it, because there is a very, very big problem that we demand that it would be solved, because it can be solved.
Thank you. We'll look out for that. One final question before we wrap up, and that's when there's big divisive social something that occurs to create a rift between citizens, how do you hold your movement together? How do you make sure you hold on to people and one side or that no one becomes disillusioned because of what's going on in the society with race baiting or in particular?
I really didn't hear the question very well because there was a lot of noise. Can you repeat it, Dan?
I'm sorry, there's construction going on in the background. How do you maintain your cohesion when there's been an attempt by the government or outside groups to create racial divisions? Or when something happens, for example, when Gantz capitulated and marginalized Arab representation. How do you maintain cohesion? How do you keep your membership from becoming disillusioned?
I think that this all issues that you talked about just right now are strengthening our members in standing together. Actually, it's really, I think, the more that these things happens, the more our members are convinced that they are doing the right thing, that they are really doing the things that we should do as Israelis in the Israeli society. And I think that after action like that, we see that we are increasing the members in standing together, and more people are willing to be a part of our movement and to struggle with us. So I don't see, that these issues are really doing bad for us. No.
That may be the most hopeful thing I've heard in a long time. Thank you. So just to wrap it up, thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you, Diana.
Thank you, Diana, and thank you all for this really very interesting talk.
And we'll look forward to being able to see you when we can all get together. And just one last word. I know that it's part of it's on your statement of purpose, your mission statement, that you say, we believe that there is nothing that a committed and hopeful group of people cannot achieve. We feel the same way at J Street, and we thank you so much for being part of this and for your leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana, and thank you for J Street for organizing, and people, you keep safe and healthy.
Bye-bye. Well.